The first thing I noticed was her communicator on the outdoor table, screen up, humming ceaselessly. Not her hand, not in her bag, just sitting there blazing with messages bursting from a contact labeled Silas. She wasn't around, but her giggle was. It rose from somewhere within the house, sharp, breezy, as if she weren't someone's wife, as if she weren't my wife. I shouldn't have walked through the doorway. That wasn't part of the arrangement. I was to stay in the vehicle, message her when I showed, act as if everything was standard, but something felt out of sync before I even steered out of our driveway. She'd switched her attire thrice, told me not to wait, said the gathering would be lifeless, yet put on footwear she hadn't worn since our wedding rehearsal feast. So, yeah, I appeared around 9:30. She stated 10:30, an hour more. That's all it needed for the actuality of my marriage to begin disintegrating like damp mortar. No music outside, just whispers through the walls, interrupted by intermittent laughter. Warm lighting throbbed behind the drapes. It was the sort of house where folks go to forget they have responsibilities or husbands. I took a step inside. No one observed me immediately. I suppose I looked like one of them. Khakis, buttoned shirt, uneasy vibe. Half the guys present were either discussing digital currency or acting like they cared about someone's golden retriever. And then I spotted her. She was in the cooking area gulping straight from a wine bottle, shoeless now, situated on the counter with some guy standing between her knees. He voiced something, and she tilted her head back in a loud guffaw. The type of laugh I hadn't detected since we were still using the same toothpaste. She didn't spot me, but he did. He marked me the instant I crossed the doorway. His eyes narrowed as if he was resolving mathematics. He didn't stir, though, just kept one hand on her thigh as if he had every right to. That's when it struck me. She invited him. This wasn't some off-the-cuff thing. This wasn't just a moment. This was planned. I stepped backward as if the atmosphere had become too dense. My shoulder hit a shelf. A wine glass tumbled and exploded at my feet. That's when she glanced up. Her smile disappeared so swiftly it resembled someone switching off a light. She froze. He didn't. She slipped off the counter, clumsy, like her knees forgot how to be legs. "You're here early," she said, as if that explained anything. "You're barefoot," I replied. I didn't shout. I didn't get angry. I just stared at her as if I was trying to spot a version of her that no longer existed. She opened her mouth to respond again, but I turned and headed out. Back to the auto, still grasping my keys, still grasping some warped notion that this was recoverable. But even in the quiet of the driver's seat, I could still hear her laugh. The false one. The one she used with him. It echoed like a warning I never followed, and it hasn't stopped since. I didn't drive away immediately. I sat in the auto, parked 3 houses down with the motor off, and my fingers still gripped the keys as if they were the only thing maintaining me stable. I didn't even look at my device. I just stared at the radiating dashboard and listened to the soft tapping of the cooling motor, acting like if I stayed still long enough, time would reset and I could do this whole night differently. I saw her silhouette through the windshield, maybe 10 minutes later. She emerged from the house, footwear back on, hair gathered up as if she was trying to look respectable again. The guy didn't come out with her. She moved with resolve, but not grace, like someone attempting to act sober when they aren't. When she reached the passenger entrance, she hesitated. Her hand floated above the grip as if she was requesting permission. I unlocked the entrances. She slipped in silently. I could smell the wine on her breath before she even spoke a word. But what truly hit me was the perfume, not her usual one. This was sweeter, louder, one I didn't recognize. I wondered if he liked it. I wondered if she wore it for him. "Thanks for arriving," she said gently, as if I hadn't just discovered her with another man's hands between her knees. I didn't respond. I couldn't, because anything I'd say would have surfaced too calm, too broken, or, worse, too excusing. She gazed at me, searching my face for something. A cue, a crack, a route back into the lie. It wasn't how it appeared, she commenced, and I actually guffawed, not because it was funny, but because it was the most unoriginal, exhausted, soulless thing she could have said in that instant. I turned to her finally. You're going to attempt that line? Seriously? She blinked. Aurora, just listen. I had too much to drink. He was being flirty, and I made a mistake. You invited me to collect you from the place where you were planning to cheat. On me, I said, my voice low and flat. That's not a mistake. That's choreography. She didn't deny it. She just glanced away. A long silence elapsed before she spoke again, quieter this time. I didn't think you'd arrive early. That was the part that crushed me the most. Not that she cheated, not that she kissed him, not even that she lied. It was that she only cared because she got caught. She wasn't sorry. She was sloppy. I started the motor. We drove in silence. She kept her arms folded, her body turned away from me as if I was the one who violated her privacy. When we steered into our driveway, she didn't stir to exit. Instead, she turned to me, eyes glossy. Can we talk about this inside? No, I said. Her expression hardened. So, that's it. You're not even going to try to hear me out. I turned off the ignition and faced her completely. I showed up an hour early and found you kissing a man you clearly knew well enough to sit on a cooking counter with your legs around him. You didn't pull away. You didn't push him off. You looked happy. And now you're attempting to spin this into something less ugly so you can return to pretending this marriage is fine. Aurora, I've been lonely too, she blurted out. That stung more than I anticipated. Maybe because part of me believed it. Maybe because I knew I'd let my guard down for too long. Said yes too much. Lost my backbone somewhere in the ease of routine. But loneliness doesn't excuse betrayal. Not like that. Not in my house. Not with that smile I saw her give him. Then why didn't you tell me? I asked. She didn't answer. I exited the auto and walked around to unlock her entrance. She sat there for a few seconds before stepping out, as if she was doing me a favor. Inside the house, it felt too quiet, too sterile, as if all the warmth had been vacuumed out. She headed straight to the lavatory, presumably to cry or fix her makeup. Who knows? I stood in the hallway staring at the framed photo of us from last fall. It was from a wedding we attended in Vermont. She had her arm around me, and I looked proud. I wonder if that guy had seen his photo, if he'd walked through our home when I wasn't around, if he'd touched things that still had my name scribbled all over them. Later that night, she entered the bedroom with her eyes red and voice. I'm sorry, she whispered like a kid caught stealing. I truly am. But all I could think about was her message from earlier. Can you arrive 11 instead? It's still active here. LOL. Still active. That line kept looping in my head like a cracked vinyl. And for the first time since I met her, I slept on the couch, not out of anger, but because I couldn't bear to be next to someone who made room in her life for a man with his hand on her thigh, while her husband waited in the auto, thinking he was being thoughtful. Morning felt wrong. The sort of wrong that clings to your skin even after you shower, even after the coffee commences brewing. The house was still, but not calm. Giselle moved through the cooking area like a visitor, attempting not to disturb the owner. Barefoot, hair still damp, her robe tied too tight, as if she was attempting to hold herself together with knots. She didn't say good morning, neither did I. Instead, she slid a mug toward me with her head down as if caffeine could erase the night before. The only sound in the cooking area was the hum of the icebox and the spoon clinking against the ceramic as I stirred out of habit. Not because I wanted the sugar. I didn't even take a sip. I called in unwell, she said eventually, barely louder than a whisper. I didn't think I could go in today. I nodded once, not because I agreed, but because I didn't care. She stood there waiting, but I didn't ask her to sit. She didn't apologize again. She didn't explain. She just waited like I was supposed to fix the script so she could step back into the role of wife again. After a few more minutes of silence, I finally asked, How long? She didn't act like she didn't know what I meant. She didn't ask me to clarify. Since September. She said that was 3 months. 3 months of secrets. 3 months of hand-picked lies, choreographed nights, calculated messages, and moments where she chose someone else, and still came home to me, kissed me, thanked me, asked me to collect paper towels on the way back from work. I didn't ask who he was. I didn't need to. I already knew what mattered, that he wasn't a mistake. He was a routine, and I was what, Aurora? The errand boy, I muttered, not entirely intending to say it aloud. The taxi driver you kiss on the cheek while your real night concludes with someone else's hands under your dress. Don't, she snapped too fast, too raw. Why not? It's all true, isn't it? Her voice cracked when she spoke next. I didn't mean for her to get that far. It was supposed to be harmless. You don't end up on a cooking counter with your legs around someone in a moment of harmless, I said. She covered her face. I thought she might cry again, but nothing came. Maybe even the guilt had burned out overnight. I don't know why I did it, she whispered through her fingers. That's what broke me, because I knew why, because I'd seen it before, not in her, but in other people. My parents, my sister's marriage. The difference between love and ease is razor thin when you don't discuss the things that ache in silence. I had stopped asking Giselle questions months ago because I thought space was respectful. Turns out space just made it easier for someone else to step in. But she didn't trip into an affair. She invited it. She wore new perfume, changed her passwords, laughed louder at jokes that weren't mine, smiled at messages. She quickly turned face down on the table, and all the while, I thought we were just in a rut. I left the cooking area and headed to the bedroom. I didn't say where I was going. I just needed space without the silence of her presence choking it. I grabbed my laptop and commenced opening bank statements. If this was the end, I needed to see what else had been hidden. And that's when the real punch landed. One account, the joint savings we were constructing for a journey to Denver, was $4,800 lighter than it should have been, with transfers all labeled event support spread across 3 weeks. I scroll back. Giselle had been careful not to take big chunks, just enough to go unnoticed. Just enough to cover what? Dinners, hotels, gifts. I stared at the numbers cold and mechanical on the screen while my heart attempted to catch up to the betrayal. When I heard her footsteps approach the doorway, I didn't glance up. I kept the screen open, let her see it herself. "What is this?" I asked quietly. She didn't respond immediately. Then he was between jobs. It surfaced so casual, as if she was explaining a service fee. My head snapped toward her. "You used our savings to fund your affair." She glanced away, and I saw it. That flicker of shame, not because she spent it, but because she got caught twice now. First in the moment, now in the trail. I stood slowly, not because I was attempting to intimidate her, but because my body physically couldn't hold still. "This was for our anniversary journey," I said. "The one you said we should delay because you were too occupied." She folded her arms, defensive now. "You think this is all just black and white? You think I planned this because I hate you? I've been exhausted, Aurora. You don't see how absent you've been." The words hit like a slap, not because they weren't partially true, but because she used my loyalty as a weapon. Turned my efforts, my predictability, my quiet love into an excuse for betrayal. "I was absent," I echoed, "because I didn't micromanage you, because I let you have your space. That's not absence. Giselle, that's trust." She walked out, and I let her because if I kept going, I was afraid I'd say something I couldn't take back, or worse, excuse something I never should. I spent the rest of that day not crying, not yelling, just staring at our wedding photo on the wall. She was in white. I was in navy. And behind our smiling faces was a quote we'd asked the photographer to add. "Love always finds its way back." I took the frame down, turned it over, and put it face down in the closet. Some things don't deserve to hang on the wall anymore. I didn't say a word to her the next morning, not because I was being dramatic, not to punish her. I just didn't have anything left. You can't pour from an empty cup. And mine had been drained dry, flipped upside down, and cracked down the middle. She slept in the bedroom. I stayed on the couch. I heard her cry once, sometime around 3:00 a.m. It wasn't the sort of sobbing you hear in movies. No gasping, no broken apologies whispered into a pillow. Just a dull, pitiful sound as if she was mourning something that had already been dead for a while. By noon, she was gone. She didn't leave a note. No text, no call. Just took her keys, her device, her guilt, and walked out. I didn't chase her. I didn't even stand at the window to watch her leave. If anything, I felt relief. Not because I wanted her gone, but because her presence had turned our home into a crime scene. I spent the day cleaning, not a tidy up. I wasn't in denial, but because it was the only thing I could control. I stripped the bed she'd slept in, washed the sheets in silence. I found one of her earrings behind the nightstand tangled in a dust bunny. I tossed it into the trash without thinking. It wasn't until I opened her laptop that I realized how little I actually knew the woman I married. She had left it on the dining table. I knew I shouldn't have opened it. And for a few seconds, I hovered over the lid as if it was a ticking bomb. But curiosity and betrayal is like a disease. Once it starts, it doesn't stop at the surface. There wasn't a password. She must have assumed I'd never look. Or maybe she forgot, too comfortable in the idea that I'd never question her. Her email was open, not her main account, a secondary one I didn't recognize. A Gmail address with a name I'd never seen before, buried under some alias she must have used for work, or worse. The first email was from him. Subject line, Thursday was perfect. Still thinking about you? That attire, that perfume, that laugh. I'm going crazy waiting for the next time. Should I collect you again? Or is the driver back on duty? He put that in quotes. Driver. That was me. I read it 3 times, not because I didn't understand it, but because I couldn't believe the casual cruelty. I was a joke in their private world. A footnote. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what came next. An email dated 2 weeks ago from her to him. Subject, Denver journey. I told Aurora the anniversary journey was too expensive. He bought it without a fight. I'll reallocate the money over the next few weeks so we can book the cabin. Still working on excuses for the time off, but it's happening. I need this. I need you. That word, reallocate, like our marriage was a corporate spreadsheet. I shut the laptop so hard, it made the salt shaker on the table jump. Denver. That had been our dream. A coastal cabin, cozy fireplaces, the rain outside while we read in silence. Just being near each other after years of drifting. I'd spent late nights running overtime to afford it, and she turned it into a romantic escape for 2, minus me. I didn't call her. I didn't get angry. I sat in the same chair staring at the now closed laptop and felt a quiet coldness settle in me. Not rage, not even sadness, just a clean, clinical detachment that I'd never known I was capable of. That evening, she returned, keys jingling softly, attempting not to wake the guilt. She walked in like nothing had happened, like the weight of her betrayal was something we'd eventually file under a rough patch. I was still at the table, still waiting. She froze when she saw me. You haven't moved. Hon, you lied about everything, I said. Even Denver. She blinked, caught between panic and denial. What do you mean? I slid the laptop across the table toward her. That other email account, the one where you joke about me like I'm your intern. She didn't touch it. She just glanced down at her hands as if they belonged to someone else. I read all of it, Giselle. I know about the cabin, the money, him. I was going to cancel it, she whispered. No, I said, you weren't. Then I said something I didn't plan to say. Not yet. Anyway, I've contacted a lawyer. That made her glance up fast. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. No protest. No plea, just breath. I'm not doing this anymore, I continued. I'm not going to wait for you to decide when you're done using me as your fallback plan. I've been loyal, I've been patient, I've been invisible, and now I'm done. She stood there like someone realizing they were the only one left in a room after the music stopped. She didn't beg. She didn't explain. She just sat down slowly across from me. You think this makes you strong? She said, voice shaking, walking away. No, I said. I think staying made me weak. She nodded once. He won't take care of me the way you did. I guffawed, but there was no humor in it. No, he won't. But you didn't want a partner, Giselle. You want an audience, and I finally stopped clapping. Giselle didn't leave that night. She stayed in the house, claiming the guest room like it was neutral ground. I didn't fight her on it, not because I wanted her there, but because I needed to see who she became when the spotlight of her lie was gone. She didn't cry. She didn't lash out. She barely looked me in the eye. It was like I'd turned into the inconvenience she had to step over on the way to her next chapter. The next morning, I found her sitting on the couch with her laptop open. She'd brewed herself coffee. None for me. She was in a crisp white sweater I hadn't seen before, which presumably meant he bought it. It still had that new stiffness, and I could smell his cologne faintly in the threads. "Are you really going through with a lawyer?" she asked, eyes still on her screen. I didn't respond immediately. I just leaned against the doorway, studying her like a stranger who had broken into my home and started redecorating. Finally, I said, "You spent months rewriting our marriage while I was still showing up for it. I'm not going to be the guy who sticks around after the credits roll." She shut the laptop. "You don't understand what it's like being married to someone so passive," I guffawed once. "You mean quiet, or maybe boring, right?" She shrugged. "You never fought for me." "I never thought I had to." The silence between us thickened like smoke. She glanced away, presumably because I just said something too real. The sort of truth that doesn't surface unless everything's broken. I walked away before she could say anything else. My device buzzed as I reached the hallway. A text from a number I didn't have saved. "Aurora, I know you don't know me, but I think we need to talk about Giselle." I froze for a moment. I thought it was him. Maybe the guy she was with had some sick urge to taunt me, rub it in. But the name that followed the next message left me staring at the screen, stunned. "My name is Delilah. I'm his ex-wife." I stepped outside and called her immediately. The phone rang once before she answered. "Aurora?" she asked. Her voice was tired but kind, the sort of tone that belongs to someone who knows what betrayal sounds like. "Yes," I said. "I got your message. I didn't want to get involved, but Giselle doesn't know when to stop, and neither does he." I sat on the porch steps, suddenly saddened. "You're talking about the guy she's been seeing?" "Yes," she replied. "His name is Silas. We were married for 7 years. I divorced him last year. And if she thinks he's loyal to her—" She trailed off. I waited. "What happened?" "He has a pattern," she said. "He targets women who are already in relationships. He gets off on the secrecy, on the thrill of ruining things. Then he disappears, always leaves just before the fallout. I wanted to warn you when I found out he was seeing someone married, but I didn't know it was Giselle until recently. And then I saw your name in the contact. She was stupid enough to sync with a shared calendar." She sighed. "I know it's weird me calling, but trust me, he'll be gone soon." "You won't even have to lift a finger." I couldn't speak. The rage I'd buried was surfacing, not because of what he'd done, but because she'd let it happen willingly. "I'm sorry," Delilah said. "I truly am, but I promise you, you are not the first man she's tried to replace." She hung up before I could thank her. I stayed outside for another hour, my thoughts racing, my stomach turning, and then something in me clicked. Not out of anger, out of clarity. When I went back inside, Giselle was in the cooking area again making eggs, like nothing happened. I sat across from her. "Did you ever ask Silas if he was married before?" I asked. She stopped cracking the second egg. Her shoulders tensed. "What? His ex-wife says, "Hello, nice woman." She says, "You're not exactly the—" First, her face paled. I watched the calculation in her eyes. That desperate mental math. She hadn't known, and worse, she didn't care until now. "You went digging through my life?" she snapped. "No," I said. "He left the shovel in your purse." She stepped back from the counter as if she'd been slapped. "So what? You think this makes you better than me now?" "No," I said again. "It just makes me sure I don't want to be anything like you." The front doorbell rang. I stood and went to answer it. It was a courier. He handed me an envelope. I signed for it, opened it without thinking. Inside, a printed contract from the law office. I'd emailed draft divorce papers. She walked into the hall, her eyes narrowing as I read the first few lines. "You already started it yesterday," I said. She blinked. "You didn't even ask me." "You gave up the right to be asked when you made me the punchline in your secret inbox." She stood frozen, jaw twitching, attempting to summon tears that wouldn't come. The performance had ended. The audience was gone. She was just Giselle now, not the confident party girl, not the seductive risk-taker, just a woman who bet on a liar and lost everything. "I want half," she whispered finally. That's when I smiled for the first time in days. "You'll get what's fair," I said. "But I wouldn't count on his help. Word is he's already packed his bags." She gazed at me like I'd stab her with truth. And in that moment, I felt something shift. Not satisfaction, not revenge. Freedom. Giselle didn't speak to me for the next 2 days. The only sounds in the house were the clink of her fork on her plate and the occasional slam of a door when she thought I was nearby. But I wasn't hiding anymore. I didn't move quietly. I didn't tiptoe around her moods or pretend we were still in some kind of limbo that might heal. I had given her all the chances in the world to tell the truth, to come clean, to own what she did, and she spat on every one of them. But I hadn't told her everything either. After Delilah's call, I hadn't just let it end there. Something kept gnawing at me. Something about Silas, not just that he was a serial affair artist or emotionally manipulative. No, it was the way she spoke about him. The way Giselle trusted him so easily, like she'd fallen under some spell. So I started digging. I didn't do anything illegal, just the sort of digging that anyone with basic curiosity and a little pain in their chest could manage. I started with public records. I found out Delilah had filed a restraining order against Silas 6 months before the divorce. Emotional coercion, financial manipulation, 2 documented cases of workplace harassment. Both closed quickly with quiet settlements. And 1 former employer who had fired him. For undisclosed reasons, which based on a Reddit thread buried in a local news forum, may have involved a much younger intern. And then I found something else. 2 days before Giselle's gathering, Silas had filed a rental application, not in our city, not even our state, a 1-bedroom loft in Denver. Lease start date the following Monday. He was already gone. When I saw the date, I guffawed. One of those bitter, joyless laughs that scraped the back of your throat. Giselle had no idea. She betrayed everything we built for a man who never intended to stay. She'd rewritten the ending of our marriage for someone who'd already packed for the next chapter, and she was still under the illusion that she held the cards. I waited until Sunday night to tell her. I waited until she was sitting on the couch with her device in her lap, staring at the screen like she was hoping it would explain everything for her. She glanced up when I walked in. No fight in her, just a tired woman in yesterday's makeup and a robe she'd forgotten how to tie properly. "You're waiting for him to text, aren't you?" I asked. She didn't respond. She didn't have to. I tossed the printed lease onto the coffee table. She flinched when it landed. When she leaned forward to read it, I watched the blood drain from her face, like a faucet had opened inside her chest. "You knew," she whispered. "For 2 days now you didn't say anything. You didn't ask." Her eyes locked with mine, wide and glassy. "He said he was just taking time. He told me he needed space to figure things out." "And you believed that?" Her lip trembled. "I thought maybe you thought he'd rescue you from the mess you made. And now you're stuck with the ashes, and the one person you thought you'd never need again. Aurora, stop. No, I said, my voice level. You don't get to, Aurora. Stop me anymore. You don't get to shut me down like that. You asked me to collect you from a gathering, and when I got there early, I caught you making out with the guy who was halfway out of your life before you even texted me. That's who you chose over me. That's the man you built a fantasy around while stealing from our savings. She covered her mouth and glanced down. I didn't know if she was about to cry or throw up. I didn't care. You think I'm boring? Fine. You think I'm quiet? Fine. But I was loyal, and loyal doesn't mean weak. It means I trusted you not to burn down the house while I was out buying the nails to fix the roof. She stood suddenly. You don't know what it's been like being with you. I know I wasn't enough for you, and I've made peace with that, but you know what I was? I was real, and he wasn't. She stormed into the guest room, and for the first time I didn't follow. But the story didn't end there, because Monday morning I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't pick up, but something made me swipe. Is this Aurora Kepler? Yes. This is Officer Wyatt with the Denver Police Department. Are you familiar with a man named Silas Ellis? The breath caught in my throat. I know of him. Why? He listed you as a professional contact on a rental form. We're conducting follow-ups due to an incident. I'm not at liberty to discuss the full details, but Mr. Ellis has been taken into custody pending further investigation. We just needed confirmation you weren't a cohabitant or financially involved in any lease agreements. What kind of investigation? I asked. A long pause. Then multiple identity fraud claims. It's not the first time. We're looking at several aliases and women who may have been victims. My skin went cold. Giselle hadn't just been used. She'd been targeted. I had no financial connection to him, I confirmed, but I know someone who might have been involved. Would you be willing to pass along our contact information? Yes, absolutely. After the call, I sat there in silence, piecing it together. All this time, I thought she'd broken my heart for another man. Turns out she'd broken it for a lie in a well-tailored jacket. I walked to the guest room entrance and knocked once. When she opened it, her eyes were red and puffy, her device in hand. Still no message. He's not going to call, I said. Because he's in jail. Her knees buckled, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel small. I felt finished. The funny thing about watching someone unravel is that it doesn't happen in the dramatic way movies like The Show. There's no screaming into pillows, no throwing plates, no thunderstorms outside as a metaphor. Real unraveling? It's quiet. It's pathetic. It's slow. I saw it begin in Giselle's knees when I told her he was in jail. I saw it again the next morning when she sat at the cooking area table with both hands wrapped around her device like it was an anchor. No makeup, hair like she hadn't slept, just sitting there refreshing the same messages that never came. And that's when the email started. Not from him, not from Delilah, from the others. I made a decision that night after the call from the police. I forwarded the officer's contact to Giselle. I didn't do it out of spite. I wasn't trying to punish her. I did it because she needed to wake up. She needed to understand just how far from reality she had wandered and how deep into someone else's con had she truly fallen. She never said thank you, but she started checking her email again like it was a lifeline. And within 24 hours, the trickle became a flood. First came Emily S.'s subject line. I saw your name mentioned in an old thread. Then Sarah from Portland, who had apparently dated Silas Ellis when he was going by Derek Vaughn. And then Mara, who attached actual bank statements from a shared account where he drained her of $7,200 before vanishing. Each story more unhinged than the last. Same man, different name, different city, always the same pattern. Charm, seduction, intimacy, vanish. He never stayed longer than 6 months, and every time he left, he did it cleanly. No social media trail, no Askabees, just new women, new lies, new versions of himself. Aurora said nothing. She didn't reply to them. She didn't cry. She just read and stared. And somewhere in all that silence, I realized she wasn't sad about losing him. She was mourning the fantasy she built in her head. She fell in love with a reflection, a shadow of a man projected through attention and danger and adrenaline. And now she was stuck with the real version of herself, the one who cheated, lied, and threw away a decade of marriage for a man who saw her as nothing but a pit stop. She didn't leave the house for 3 days. I did. I went back to work. I met with my lawyer. I started untangling my finances, canceling joint accounts, moving my name off the lease. But the thing that really changed everything came from a place I never expected. My sister, Bella, we hadn't spoken much over the last year. Most of my fault. I pulled away. Giselle had always said Bella was too nosy, and I listened. But when Bella heard what had happened, and she did, because news like this moves faster than shame, she showed up on my doorstep with 2 iced coffees and a manila envelope. She hugged me tight and whispered, "You should have told me sooner. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that." Over coffee, she slid the envelope toward me. "I don't want to make this worse," she said, "but you should know something." Inside were printed screenshots, texts from mutual friend of hers and Giselle, messages exchanged months ago, well before the gathering. "Giselle, I think I finally met someone who makes me feel alive. I don't feel trapped anymore." Friend, "What about Aurora?" "Giselle, he won't leave unless I give him a reason. Maybe time I give him one." I felt the room tilt. All this time I thought the betrayal was spontaneous, a slow burn that became a fire. But this was planned arson. Bella looked at me carefully, gauging my reaction. "I'm sorry. I didn't know she was serious. I thought she was just venting." "She was laying the groundwork," I muttered. "She wasn't just cheating. She was crafting an exit." And for the first time, I stopped feeling sorry for her. That night, I told her to leave. She was in the living room, curled up in a blanket, laptop open on the same thread of messages from Silas's victims. When I said her name, she looked up, hollow-eyed and pale. "You need to go." "Where? That's not my problem anymore." She sat up slowly. "You're really doing this now, after everything I've lost?" I tilted my head. "You lost what you threw away. You just didn't expect to land alone." She blinked back tears.